On today's show, a Calder race update. Is Matvei Michkov still the front runner? We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalikesh, KMJHL and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects, with Sebastian High, USHL and Crossover Scout for Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be updating the Calder race. We'll be talking about the top prospects here, the top rookies playing their first NHL seasons, and which are the front runners for the Calder Trophy. We'll start off in the first segment by making the case for Matvei Michkov and Lane Hutson. In the second segment, we'll talk about Macklin Celebrini and Logan Stankoven. And in the final segment, we'll be talking about Dustin Wolf and Maxim Tsyplakov. There's a lot of prospects to cover here, a lot of top-end names, a lot of former top 5 picks. But the fact that Lane Hutson is in this group is very, very fun. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoffs. The College Football Playoff is here, and you do not want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff, presented by Allstate, begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. If you're watching on YouTube, just remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away here with the first name on our list, which is Matvei Michkov. Let's talk about his point totals, what role he's playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, and let's just make the case for him for the Calder Trophy. Let's start with the point totals. I believe it's a point per game so far through 30-ish games, right?
Yes, he really is. He's been on fire for the Philadelphia Flyers. Michkov has logged 27 points, including 11 goals in 29 games. And for a player that got a healthy scratch a couple times earlier this season before really establishing himself as a can't-miss offensive talent for the Flyers, he's just been like really accelerating his offensive production. His confidence has been blooming, and he has 8 points in his last 5 games. He's really ramping up his offensive threat, and he's been a real pain to contain at the NHL level so far for the Flyers, and certainly one of the favorites for the Calder Trophy. We definitely think it's a 2 or 3 horse race of players that are really, really pushing for this award, but Matvei Michkov is certainly the highest producing of that bunch at this stage. I mean, Macklin Celebrini obviously missed some game time, which sent him further down the list in terms of production, but is right there with Michkov in terms of per game production. And Michkov has just been fantastic. But one thing I want to ask you is, we've been watching Michkov play for years at this point. What's one element of his game that has been a bit of an issue in his development at the KHL level, at the MHL level even, that has been better than expected in the NHL so far?
His ability to play inside structure. He's always been a structure breaker, right? Like he's always been the type of player who will separate from the systems, the tactics that are imposed by coaches in order to create, whether that's kind of blowing the zone for a breakaway or anticipating a loose puck and kind of placing himself ahead of it instead of staying in his position, that kind of thing. But he's actually been, as much as he has been breaking structures so far this year, he's actually been pretty good at playing his position, at kind of understanding the game plan and playing inside it. Now, obviously, John Tortorella has a very strict way to approach game plans and structures and tactics, and seeing Michkov try a Michigan or that kind of stuff might throw him off his game. But Tortorella understands, at least so far, that Michkov is the type of player you need to give these liberties to, because the offensive skill is off the charts. The anticipation is off the charts. Sometimes Torts understands that sometimes Michkov is seeing things that he's not when he's making these decisions on the ice. So that's a pretty interesting development in Michkov's game. And that's kind of my case for him for the Calder Trophy. We're talking about a prospect who consistently bends the game to his will, who consistently shows up when it matters, scores a decent amount of overtime goals, makes decent plays at key times in the game. Now, obviously, there are some growing pains, and he's still kind of figuring out the defensive game. But just by virtue of playing a bit more inside of his position, playing a bit more inside of tactics and structures, that's already kind of It's less egregious than it was with Sochi. It's less egregious than it was, especially in the MHL. So that's been an interesting development. But for me overall, the main case for the Calder for Matvei Michkov is he bends the game to his will. He makes his teammates better by making reads that benefit them. So overall, would you agree that Michkov is a front runner, or maybe the front runner for the Calder Trophy?
I think that perhaps Celebrini is still the front runner at this point in terms of overall impact. The offensive production per game has been very similar to Michkov's, but he's been bringing so much more value in transition and in the defensive zone, and his off-puck play is just so much more polished. So I think he might get the nod. That said, Michkov playing on a better team than Celebrini, I think does help Michkov's case here a little bit. He'll be able to potentially be a difference maker for the Philadelphia Flyers this season, whereas the Sharks are going to end up in the basement no matter what any player could do. You could stick Connor McDavid on that team and they still wouldn't finish anywhere near a playoff spot. So I think that might be a point in favor for Matvei Michkov. And that said, a similar kind of hurdle, I guess, to Calder contention to Celebrini is present with Lane Hutson, who's been playing some massive minutes for the Montreal Canadiens, but nothing he's been able to do is going to change what ends up being the result of this season for the Habs, which is not going to be a playoff finish. They're still going to be in and around the basement of the league. Whether they are picking in the top 10 range or the top 5 range remains to be seen, but Lane Hutson hasn't been able to single-handedly make this team a playoff contender, which, again, no player could. That said, what Lane Hutson has been doing has been playing massive minutes. He's been playing 20 to 25 minutes every single night for the Montreal Canadiens. He's on the first pairing with Mike Matheson. He's quarterbacking the first power play unit as well with Patrick Laine and Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Yuri Slafkovsky. Finally, the Habs have a dynamic power play to work with that seems to be a threat whenever they step on the ice, and Hudson's a big part of that. He's been really involved in all aspects of the game for the Habs, the intelligence, the intensity, the defensive commitment, if perhaps not the defensive polish, are all there, and he's been lights out for Montreal, but is that going to be enough to be in the same conversation as Celebrini and Michkov, in your opinion, for the Calder?
I think so, especially if he keeps playing the way he has in this last stretch. He has 9 points in his last 9 games. He just established a record for Montreal Canadiens rookie defenseman in terms of point streaks with 7 that just ended the game before this last one. And he scored his first NHL goal last night as of recording this. The beauty of a snipe, kind of activating down from the blue line, receiving a pass from Mike Matheson, and just ripping it far side on Connor Hellebuck. No slouch goaltending wise. Absolutely. So very, very interesting kind of prospect in his own right. And if you look back at the way he was playing in his draft year, his draft +1 and his draft +2, not much has really changed in terms of the way that Hutson approaches a game. He's essentially doing the same things, just at a better level with better timing, better play selection. But the vision, the accuracy, the handling skill, the head fakes. I mean, we've all seen the head fakes.
Yes.
We're used to it by now, but yeah, Lane Hutson is just on a different level from that blue line. And I don't think there's another rookie defenseman who's even approached the amount of responsibilities and minutes that Hudson's taking on as a 5'10", undersized, underweight defenseman.
Offensive defenseman at that.
And he's also been good defensively. Don't be fooled by the plus minus. Hutson has been very engaged off puck. He's been reading plays really well in his defensive zone, making key breakups, getting back on the back check with a lot of energy. I mean, this kid has ridiculous cardio. When you watch him go all game at that high pace, back and forth, up and down the ice the whole game, making plays offensively. Those head fakes, those stop-ups and accelerations, they take a lot of energy out of a player. So I'm very, very impressed with what Hudson's been able to do at the NHL level. And, you can say he's doing cardio all game as kind of a what do you say that?
Slight?
Yes. You can say he's doing cardio all game as a slight on him, but honestly, it's impressive how much energy he puts into every shift, 20 to 25, sometimes 28, 29, 30 minutes a game as a rookie defenseman. That takes a lot out of the body, eh?
It really does. I mean, we saw this also last season with Brock Faber with the Minnesota Wild in terms of a rookie defenseman who comes into the league, plays top pairing pretty much out of the gate, and just brings a ton of energy and defensive intelligence to the table. Faber has a lot more polished defensive tools to support that defensive awareness and those defensive habits, but Lane Hutson has been doing the very most with his physical tools that he's been able to do at the NHL level this season. And I think especially what you touched on slightly there, the back checking intensity. Whenever he pinches forward and gets beat, loses the puck, it looks like it's an odd man rush going back the other way. You might see a guy like Mike Matheson gracefully making his way all the way back. That's not Lane Hutson's style. He starts sprinting in the most direct line he can find. He's not the most efficient skater in the world, but when he puts his mind to something like that, he gets back. And once he gets back near a puck carrier, he pests them until a bunch of Habs forwards can come back and support defensive play, tying things up even in open ice. Really, really impressive start to his NHL career.
Absolutely. But that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment here where we talk about Macklin Celebrini and Logan Stankoven, two other very good candidates for the Calder Trophy. But before I get into that, just a quick word from our sponsors at Built and Select Quote.
Today's episode is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. You can even redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. I love using points to travel, and especially with all this money going towards my rent payments, getting something back for a holiday at the end of the year always feels like something really special. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use the links so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today.
Whether it's the World Series, the Super Bowl, or the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And that teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time and care of yourself to be the healthiest, best version of you, and Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that effort as well. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Just go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. All right, so time for our second segment here, and we'll talk about two more very, very good candidates for the Calder Trophy. This is a tight race at the top, and Macklin Celebrini's up next. Personally, as much as I like Michkov, as much as I like Lane Hutson, Macklin Celebrini has been my favorite rookie so far this season. And it's not because of the points, it's not because of the shot, it's not because of the handling skill or all of the things that made him a high-end first overall pick this past draft. It's the details. He is so phenomenally detailed on and off the puck. The way that he approaches board battles, the way that he gets back on defense, his positional sense, the transition skill is still just the key aspect of his offensive game. And it's not just being a high-end skater, a high-end handler, for example, like a Jack Hughes. Like Jack Hughes' approach to transition play is one of the best in the NHL, but that's not Celebrini's game. Celebrini's game is reading structures, reading defenses, and figuring out what the right transition play is. Does he play a give and go? Does he drive wide? Does he cut inside? Does he use his shot threat to open up a passing lane? Does he use his passing threat to open up a shot lane? There's just so much refinement in that aspect of his game, right?
So much polish. You're completely right. And we talked about this yesterday as well when we were breaking down the San Jose prospect pool. And of course, Celebrini is still the absolute gem of that group. But yeah, it's all pace in transition. That really is where he is excelling the most in his rookie season. But there's so much beyond that too. On the cycle play, there's the same level of intelligence and game reading and composure and patience with the puck on his stick as he shows in transition. And he's really been exploring his cycle creation as the season is wearing on. And defensively, off puck, dropping low in the defensive zone, like putting in the cardio, just like Lane Hutson does, to catch up to plays, to apply pressure, to play at high pace, no matter where the puck is or what situation is going on the ice. That's been Macklin Celebrini's like bread and butter this season. He's been doing all of that. He's putting in the work. And I mean, he has 5 points in his last 3 games with San Jose. He's in a bit of a hot streak at the moment, and certainly a player that is going to be the cornerstone of the Sharks for a very long time to come.
Absolutely. Such an interesting prospect for me. Heading into his draft year, it was so clear that he was going to be playing top 6 minutes right away, regardless of what team he ended up on. I mean, there are very few teams that weren't going to benefit from Celebrini in their top 6. Much less the San Jose Sharks. They needed someone like Celebrini in their top 6. And so far, barring that stretch with an injury, he's stepped in and been a phenomenal player for them, especially when he's been playing with Tyler Toffoli, who's really, really good at reading a teammate who's better in transition, who's a better puck carrier, and playing off of him. That combination has been lethal so far this year. And those two have been kind of slowly but surely developing really, really good chemistry. And again, just playing off each other in phenomenal ways. So for me, Celebrini, just his ability to step into an NHL lineup and look not out of place, but look like a true game changer from day one. That's something we didn't even really see from Connor Bedard last year. I mean, especially at the start of the season. It took some time for Bedard to get used to playing with the line mates that he was playing with and get up to that speed. But now Celebrini's he's making the transition to the NHL look phenomenally easy, and that's no easy feat at all, right? Like this is phenomenal from Celebrini. But moving on, we also need to talk about Logan Stankoven and give him his flowers, because so far this season, Stankoven has proven every doubter wrong, just as he's done so far throughout his whole career. We were talking about a 5'8" forward who works his butt off. He outworks 6'3", 6'4" defenders, and that's how he wins his battles. And so far for Dallas, it's just been the exact same thing we've seen from him in the WHL so far in his career. So what's been your read on Stankoven so far this season, and what are his odds of winning the Calder Trophy?
I think his odds were better about like 3 weeks ago than they are now. We're seeing Celebrini, Michkov, and Hutson keep heating up. And with Stankoven, the production's dried up a little bit in the last 10 games. After starting the season with almost a point a game pace through 17 games, he's only logged 2 points in the last 10, both being assists and also having a couple like 4 or 5 game pointless droughts in that mix. So a player that, as you mentioned, never stops working. So even when he's not scoring, he's not putting pucks in the net, he's not setting up chances as much as he does typically. He's still an incredibly valuable player. And throughout this entire dry spell, he's still playing 18, 17, 15 minutes a night with the Dallas Stars, a very competitive lineup, which also goes to show his value when the points aren't going in, when the puck luck isn't quite there. He's still a really important piece of that team as just a 21-year-old in his rookie season. So a player that I think is valuable in every sense of the word. Once his production starts going again, which it will, it always has kept going through his dry spells with Logan Stankoven. That's not going to start now. He's going to continue being a really dangerous top 6 piece for the Dallas Stars. But Hattie, I wanted to ask, we always know with Stankoven, there's the goal scoring threat, there's the motor, the intensity, the middle drive. What's one aspect of his NHL game that has improved steadily from what we saw in his draft year, for instance?
I think in terms of the goal scoring skill, it's actually gotten better than it already was. I love the way that he sets up his shot quickly and efficiently. It's been a great aspect of his game. The playmaking skills also slightly improved as well. I think overall the puck skills are really what kind of impressed me the most in terms of what Stankoven brings to the game, because the approach, the mindset, the habits, they've always been there. I don't think that's ever been an issue with Stankoven. The issue is mainly how do you leverage those habits, that mindset, that approach to the game, and kind of uplifted with higher end puck skills. And so far, Stankoven has added a decent amount to that, in my opinion. That's our second segment done, though. We'll get into our third segment here where we talk about Dustin Wolf, who's been absolutely phenomenal so far for the Calgary Flames, and Maxim Tsyplakov of the New York Islanders. But before getting into that, just a quick word from our sponsors over at FanDuel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Whether you want to take those swings on the NFL and American football, or perhaps you prefer European football with the Champions League going at full throttle at this point, or maybe you prefer tennis or golf. Whatever it may be, FanDuel has a sport for every single kind of sports fan, and that includes hockey, so this podcast is not being forgotten anywhere. That's FanDuel.com if you join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Alrighty, so moving on to our final segment here, we'll be making the case for Dustin Wolf and Maxim Tsyplakov. Let's start off with Dustin Wolf, because he's been absolutely phenomenal so far in the NHL. Surprise, surprise, the undersized goaltender who's been absolutely dominant at every single level he's played at continues to be absolutely dominant in the NHL. Just had a shutout last game against the Florida Panthers. The Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers. He just had a shutout against them. Just absolutely ridiculous from Dustin Wolf so far this year. Talk me through why exactly teams have kind of shied away from him since his draft year. He was drafted in the 7th round by, was it the Flames? I think it was the Flames that drafted him, right?
It was indeed. Yeah, he's been developing with the Flames organization ever since being picked in the 7th round at 214th overall in 2019. And just to note, that was off the back of a season where he's playing with the Everett Silvertips. He started 61 games and put up a .936 save percentage in the WHL. Those are numbers that get you drafted in the 1st round if you are taller than 6 feet. Unfortunately, Dustin Wolf is only 6 feet tall, so that is apparently a 7th round caliber prospect. Is what it is. We saw the same thing happen with Devin Levi as well in his draft year, though a bit different because he was playing in a far lesser league against far lesser competition. But still, Devin Levi has been fantastic in the WHL and also in the AHL with the Stockton Heat and then the Calgary Wranglers. Last season he put up a .922 at the AHL level. Also got into 17 NHL games last year. Had some growing pains there with an .893 save percentage. It wasn't all the smoothest, but the flashes of brilliance were always there, even in those NHL cameos. And then this season, the crease is his. He is the 1A in Calgary. He's been winning games. This is not the strongest lineup the Flames have had in the last 10 years, but to start the season with a 9-5-1 record as a rookie netminder and a .915 save percentage under heavy workload, and as you mentioned, blanking out the Florida Panthers in a 3-0 win, saving all 32 shots. Things are going very, very nicely for Dustin Wolf and the Calgary Flames. But is this still a prospect that for you is among the very, very best goaltending prospects out there today with the Askarovs and Wallstedts? Where would Devin Levi fall for you? Because in terms of NHL capacity, what he's shown at the NHL level so far in his career, it exceeds what the others have been able to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, he's a bit older than Askarov and Wallstedt and those guys, but this
Only
track,
a year.
yeah, but his track record speaks for itself. Just every single level he's played at, he's just been lights out dominant. So for me, it's just how much can you give him slack for being short if he stops every puck and puts up above 910 save percentages at every level? It's just at some point, teams have to learn from this. We saw it last year with Ryerson Leanders. We're seeing it this year with Jack Avankovic. Small goaltenders always get the slack and always get the boot a little bit when it comes to NHL drafting. And I get it, bigger goalies equals bigger surface covered in the net, which usually equals more likelihood to be an NHL, shot stopper. But time and time again, we've seen these undersized, UC Saros is a perfect example of that. Dustin Wolf so far is a great example of that. At some point, you need to throw logic out the window when it comes to goalies. They are voodoo, and if they're stopping pucks, they're stopping pucks, and that's all that matters. Technique obviously gets into it, hockey sense, but most of the time, if you're undersized and stopping more pucks than a bigger goalie, you're doing something right that bigger goalies aren't. to compensate for your lack of size. And that's exactly Dustin Wolf. Energetic in the crease, high-end hockey sense, really, really good puck tracking, good puck player as well. Comfortable in scramble situations where a lot of goalies would panic. He kind of keeps his cool, evaluates, see what's going on. Just a phenomenal goaltender prospect. I think he's easily top 2, top 3 goalie prospects in the entire league. So big fan of what he brings to the game. And yeah, the Calgary Flames have another late round gem. I'm very happy for them. But lastly, we'll talk about a free agent signing who's been doing fairly well for the New York Islanders. Maxim Tsyplakov was signed by the Isles in the offseason, signed his ELC, and it's been pretty good so far this year, right?
He has been. He's a 26-year-old right winger, 6'3", 190 pounds, who signed out of the KHL, where he's been playing the past couple seasons. Last year, playing with Spartak Moscow with an A on his jersey. In 65 games, he scored 31 goals and 47 points, really getting himself onto the radar of NHL teams as a potential offensive dynamo. And he's been just that for the New York Islanders so far. He has 17 points in 31 games. He's been playing second-line minutes, really the last 10 games. The least he's played in the last 10 games has been 14 minutes, and he's played up to 18 minutes a couple times as well. So he's been very consistently deployed in that middle six, mainly on the second line for the Islanders. And he's been able to bring a lot of physicality as well as some goal scoring threat while using his big frame to open up space for his line mates. And that's also been how he's been able to get a couple of his assists this season. He's been able to impose himself physically, create space, get a little bump pass back into that space for his teammate to finish on. He's been very pragmatic in his physical implications so far in his career and hasn't bowed down to the NHL pace whatsoever so far. He's energetic. He's intense. He uses his body very, very liberally, as I mentioned. And I caught the game that he played against the Montreal Canadiens, and there were a couple of forechecking sequences where he was bullying Caden Gooley off the puck. When you have to be pretty intense, pretty physical, and pretty mobile to be able to bully a player like Caden Gooley off the puck. So he's had a really good start to his career. He's not going to really be a Calder favorite this season, despite the production. I mean, I think this episode goes to show just how competitive that race is this year. And a 26-year-old KHL import will just not be able to quite contend at that same level, but still a player that we think deserves his merits and deserves a shout out in this episode because he's been a really impactful rookie player. And while he doesn't quite fall into the prospect category as a 26-year-old, we still thought him worth mentioning on today's show. But I mean, Hattie, the Islanders always have a knack for bringing in more physical, intense, high energy players that play very effective hockey, even if they don't necessarily have the dynamism and flash to crack the highlight reel on every single weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what the Islanders like in terms of a profile here. There's no doubt. It was no surprise for me at all when I found out that they signed Maxim Tsyplakov and they were the ones that earned his rights. He's Islanders hockey, and it's really great to see the fit there. I think that's the only case you can make in terms of the role he plays on his team and the fit within his team and the way he plays being so entrenched in the identity of the New York Islanders, especially with the Lou Lamoriello New York Islanders. I think that's the only case you can make. But in terms of points, in terms of the age, in terms of all that stuff, I think he's on the outside looking in for sure. So let's kind of rank these 6 players to close things off here in terms of order of which would be our Calder kind of ballot for these 6. For me personally, Macklin Celebrini, followed by Lane Hutson, followed by very, very closely by Matvei Michkov, and then Stankoven, Wolf, and then Maxim Tsyplakov. I think I might even prefer Wolf to Stankoven right now. That might be my kind of front 6 in that order. What's yours?
I think we have consensus here, actually, which is impressive for a ranking of 6 names. I think Celebrini at 1, he's going to be a really difficult player to unseat from that just because of how impactful he is in all 3 zones. I agree with Lane Hutson at 2, and it is a coin toss with Michkov. Either way, 0 complaints in that ranking. It's just, for me, Lane Hutson's playing first pairing defensive minutes, first pairing power play, and also really providing some value on the defensive end, which is just such a massive role to undertake in his rookie campaign. Just like Brock Faber did last season, I think that really really deserves some mentions high up the Calder list. Michkov, of course, could easily be contending for number 2, even number 1 on that board. And then Dustin Wolf at number 4, Logan Stankoven at number 5, and Maxim Tsyplakov rounding out the top 6.
Perfect. So that's our final segment done and our episode done. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of our episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And remember to tune in for our next episodes as we finalize our CrossFit coverage for the month of December. This has been Haddock Calikesh with Sebastian High. Happy holidays. We hope you tune in next time.